My boss yelled at me for following instructions, told me never to remind her about deadlines so I didn't. She forgot, missed the deadline, and blamed me. But I had the perfect response that left her speechless and completely exposed her hypocrisy. About 20 years ago, I took a job as an office assistant at a small company that handled orders from clients and assigned them to highly skilled freelancers. These freelancers were well-compensated professionals, respected in their field, and, when possible, my boss herself would take on assignments. At the time, I was young and eager to build a career, and my boss made the job sound like an incredible opportunity. She told me that if I proved myself in this entry-level role, she would personally train me. Within a year, she claimed, I would likely be promoted to a full-fledged freelancer, making significantly more money. To my naive ears, this sounded like the perfect stepping stone to a promising future. From the very beginning, my boss had drilled into me a set of expectations. When an order was assigned to a freelancer, I became the project manager for that order. It was my responsibility to ensure the freelancer completed the work on time since the projects were often time-sensitive. She also frequently lectured me on using my brain, emphasizing that she was paying me minimum wage, mind you, to think and figure things out. These lectures, however, were mostly an opportunity for her to boost her own ego. She delighted in reminding her employees that she was smarter, more capable, and superior in every way. One day, our biggest corporate client placed a large and urgent order, with a deadline set for Monday at noon. As it happened, my boss took on the assignment herself, planning to complete the work over the weekend. By Monday morning, the deadline was looming, and I had yet to hear from her. The client called, checking on the status of the work, and I immediately tried to contact my boss. I called her mobile, no answer. 30 minutes later, I called again and sent a text message, still no response. With noon rapidly approaching, I started to get anxious. Desperate to reach her, I called her landline at home. Her husband answered and informed me that she wasn't home. I briefly explained why I was trying to contact her, hoping he might pass along the message. Less than an hour before the deadline, my boss finally called me back. She was furious. She berated me for repeatedly trying to contact her, accusing me of causing unnecessary stress and creating an emergency where there wasn't one. She was livid that I had called her home number, which she claimed was for emergencies only. This, apparently, was not an emergency in her eyes. It's unprofessional to call people when they are not at work. She snapped at me. She insisted she had everything under control and was just about to send the completed work directly to the client. When she arrived at the office later that day, she unleashed another scolding. She made it explicitly clear that while I was expected to chase down freelancers to ensure deadlines were met, I was never to do the same with her. If I take over a task, it's not your task anymore. It's my task. You don't need to bother me with reminders. You just give me the instructions from the client, and I'll handle everything myself. From that point on, your job is done. I never, ever miss deadlines. If the client calls, you tell them I'm on it, and you don't call or text me about it. Fine. Lesson learned. I apologized for the apparent stress I had caused and repeated her instructions back to her to ensure I fully understood. She was pleased, confirmed that I had it right, and then proceeded to launch into yet another one of her self-indulgent monologues about how she was paying me minimum wage to use my brain, complete with patronizing examples of her own brilliance. As always, I simply nodded along, pretending to absorb the wisdom she was so generously bestowing upon me. Fast forward about a month. Another client placed an order. I accepted it, and my boss was available to handle it. As instructed, I forwarded everything to her and considered my job in relation to that order finished. On the day of the deadline, I was on vacation, hiking in a remote area with limited cell reception. That morning, the other office assistant called me, explaining that the client had reached out to check if the work was ready. Remembering my boss's explicit orders, I told my colleague not to worry. Our boss is handling it personally, I reassured them. She doesn't want to be reminded about deadlines. If the client calls, just tell them she's on it. Since I was on vacation, there was no reason for me to keep my phone on. I needed to conserve my battery, and per my boss's rules, this wasn't an emergency. Plus, by this point, I had realized that she had blatantly lied to me about the career prospects at this job. There was no real path to becoming a well-paid freelancer, just empty promises to keep me working hard for a little pay. So I switched off my phone and continued my hike, blissfully unaware of the disaster unfolding back at the office. Unbeknownst to me, my boss had completely forgotten about the deadline. By the time she realized, the office was closed, and she scrambled to finish the project in a panic. Once she completed the work, she faced another problem. She didn't have the client's contact details. It turned out she didn't actually know the clients as well as she claimed. Since the order was in the office and my phone was off, She had to go there herself to retrieve the necessary contact information. To make matters worse, the office assistant had informed the client that her boss was personally handling their order. So when the work arrived late, the embarrassment was entirely on her. When I returned to work, chaos awaited me. My boss was seething with rage. She screamed at me, demanding to know why I had let this happen, but I remained calm, responding matter-of-factly. "Why did you do this?" she demanded. "You told me to." "Why didn't you do that?" "You told me not to." Her fury grew, but she couldn't argue. I had followed her instructions to the letter. She then attempted to pivot, criticizing me for turning my phone off. I simply pointed out that I had been on vacation, needed to conserve my battery for emergencies, and that an approaching deadline that she was responsible for was not an emergency. Furthermore, I wasn't on call while on vacation. Realizing she couldn't pin the blame on me that way, she switched tactics. "But you didn't provide me with the client's contact details when you assigned the order. How could I have delivered the work? It was your fault for not giving me all the information." At this, I smirked. "I thought you knew all the clients personally," I said. "Besides, if you had used your brain, like you always tell us to, you would have noticed that the order instructions were on the client's letterhead with their contact details clearly printed on every single page. At the top and bottom." Her face twisted with humiliation. It was the first time I had ever seen her at a loss for words. The realization that she had overlooked something so obvious, after constantly preaching about her superior intellect, was a massive blow to her ego. Needless to say, I was fired shortly after, but I didn't care. If anything, I was relieved to be done with her toxic behavior. And to this day, I still smile when I remember the look on her face in that moment. Happy endings come in many forms. For me, it was the sheer satisfaction of watching my boss get hoisted by her own petard. Malicious compliance for the win.